Jasmine Crockett's confrontation with Byron Donalds wasn't just another political exchange, it was a moment that defined the sharp line between truth and hypocrisy in modern politics. What unfolded was more than a verbal sparring match, it was a powerful reminder of how integrity, courage, and clarity can pierce through the fog of political performance. Crockett's words landed with precision, dismantling not only Donalds' argument but the very foundation of selective justice that has long fueled inequity. She didn't speak merely to win a point, she spoke to expose a pattern where the idea of opportunity is paraded as universal, yet protected as exclusive. Her tone carried the conviction of someone who has lived the realities others only debate, and her delivery made it clear that she wasn't just defending herself, but the principles that too many have chosen to abandon. Byron Donalds entered that exchange wrapped in the rhetoric of equal opportunity, but his words betrayed the very values he claimed to uphold. His argument, like so many from politicians who speak of merit and fairness, was built on a selective memory, one that glorifies his own rise while ignoring the systemic barriers that silence others. Jasmine Crockett saw through it. She didn't need to shout, her strength came from precision. She confronted Donalds with the undeniable contradiction between his self-made narrative and his willingness to support policies that make it harder for others to follow in his footsteps. In doing so, she pulled back the curtain on a kind of hypocrisy that hides behind polished speeches and partisan loyalty. Crockett's choice of words, opportunities for me, not for thee, wasn't just a rhetorical flourish. It was a mirror held up to a political culture where privilege disguises itself as principle. It captured, in one sharp phrase, how power structures reward those who benefit from a system while punishing those who question it. She turned Donalds' argument inside out, revealing how quickly the champions of freedom and fairness abandon their ideals when equality threatens their advantage. Crockett's command of language, paired with her calm intensity, transformed what could have been a routine exchange into a defining political moment. It was the kind of truth that cuts through spin, leaving no place for comfortable denial. Her composure throughout the confrontation showed the difference between reaction and response. While Donalds attempted to lean on familiar talking points, Crockett responded with depth, context, and clarity. She reminded everyone listening that equality isn't just about opportunity in theory, it's about access in reality. The illusion of equal opportunity has long been the weapon of the powerful, used to silence those who question why the playing field remains uneven. Crockett's presence shattered that illusion. The exchange also exposed something deeper about American politics, how identity, privilege, and power intersect in ways that determine whose voices are amplified and whose are dismissed. Donalds, like many who rise within the conservative establishment, often invokes his personal story as proof that racism or inequality no longer matter. But Crockett's rebuttal made it clear that individual success does not erase systemic barriers. It highlighted how dangerous it is to use one's personal achievements as evidence that everyone else simply needs to work harder. Her argument turned the lens back on those who exploit representation as a shield against criticism, showing that true representation requires advocacy, not just visibility. Crockett's confidence wasn't arrogance, it was authenticity. It came from a place of conviction, from knowing that truth doesn't need to be softened to be powerful. When she spoke, she embodied the frustration and determination of millions who have been told that equality already exists, even as they experience its absence daily. She called out the hypocrisy of those who enjoy the benefits of progress but resist expanding those benefits to others. Her voice carried the tone of someone who refuses to let comfort replace conscience, someone who understands that silence serves only the status quo. As she dissected Donalds' hypocrisy, Crockett didn't rely on personal attacks. She relied on logic, evidence, and moral clarity. That's what made the moment so powerful. It wasn't about spectacle, it was about substance. Her argument stood on the solid ground of truth, while Donalds' position crumbled under its own contradictions. The more he tried to defend his stance, the more obvious it became that his version of opportunity was conditional. Crockett's presence transformed that space into a courtroom of conscience, and her words served as a verdict against duplicity. She demonstrated what happens when integrity meets privilege, and integrity wins. The ripple effects of that exchange extended far beyond the room. Viewers across the nation saw a woman who refused to let power go unchecked, who spoke truth to authority not with anger but with unshakable clarity. In an era where political debates often dissolve into noise, Crockett's composure restored the essence of what leadership should look like, not manipulation, but honesty, not performance, but purpose. Her courage in confronting hypocrisy challenged others to examine their own complicity in maintaining inequality. Crockett's dismantling of Donalds wasn't just about exposing one man's inconsistency, it was about exposing a mindset that pervades political institutions. The mindset that celebrates token success stories while ignoring systemic failure. The mindset that equates personal ambition with collective progress. She reminded everyone that equality can't exist in fragments, it must be whole, consistent, and real. Her words reminded people that fairness isn't a slogan, it's a practice, one that requires honesty even when it's inconvenient. Through this powerful exchange, Jasmine Crockett reaffirmed the importance of truth in leadership. Her ability to stay composed while confronting deceit revealed her as more than just a skilled debater, she became a symbol of political integrity in an age of duplicity. She showed that progress doesn't come from pretending the playing field is level, it comes from demanding that it be made so. Her stand against hypocrisy wasn't only about calling out Byron Donalds, it was about holding a mirror up to a nation that often mistakes privilege for merit. Her message was a challenge to all who claim to believe in equality to live up to that belief, not only when it benefits them, but when it demands change. Byron Donalds' rhetoric about opportunity may have sounded appealing on the surface, but when Jasmine Crockett stepped into the conversation, she stripped away every layer of pretense. Her response wasn't just sharp, it was surgical. She cut through his arguments with clarity, exposing the contradiction between the narrative of self-made success and the reality of a system that still tilts the scales in favor of a select few. Donalds positioned himself as a symbol of what's possible when one works hard, but Crockett challenged that symbol with a dose of truth. Opportunity means nothing when it's not accessible to all. Her words reminded the audience that the American dream can't just be a slogan recited by those who have already made it, it has to be a promise kept for those who are still fighting to reach it. Crockett's rebuttal was more than a moment of debate, it was a statement about how political rhetoric often disguises structural inequality. When Byron Donalds spoke about equal opportunity, he presented his personal story as proof that the system works for anyone willing to put in the effort. But Crockett wasn't persuaded by anecdotal evidence, she understood the difference between personal success and collective equity. Her argument illuminated a crucial truth that's often ignored: one person's climb doesn't erase the ladders that have been pulled up behind them. She challenged the comfort that comes with privilege, pointing out how easily those who benefit from opportunity often forget to extend it to others. Her tone carried not anger, but righteous precision, the kind that silences excuses and replaces them with accountability. "Opportunities for me, not for thee," was more than a powerful phrase, it was an indictment of hypocrisy masquerading as hard work. Crockett showed that Donalds' version of success wasn't the product of a fair system but of a selective one. She questioned how someone who claims to champion equality could simultaneously support policies that deepen the divide. Her argument wasn't about partisanship, it was about principle. In a society that loves to celebrate the few who make it while ignoring the many who are left behind, Crockett's confrontation was a reminder that true equality demands more than words, it demands action. Her message was clear: you cannot stand on a platform built on privilege and preach about fairness without acknowledging who's been kept off that platform. Throughout her delivery, Crockett's composure reflected her experience and purpose. She didn't need to raise her voice to make her point resonate. Each word was measured, deliberate, and purposeful, the kind of speech that reveals both intellect and conviction. Her challenge to Donalds wasn't about personal rivalry, it was about integrity in leadership. She embodied what it means to speak truth to power, to demand honesty from those who shape policy and public opinion. The calm confidence she carried made the contrast between her authenticity and Donalds' political posturing all the more striking. It was a moment where truth had both moral and rhetorical force, cutting through the pretense that often shields politicians from accountability. Donalds, for all his claims about opportunity, failed to acknowledge that not everyone begins from the same starting point. Crockett reminded him and the audience that real opportunity must account for the barriers that still exist: economic, racial, educational, and systemic. The privilege of those who've made it doesn't cancel out the struggles of those who haven't been given the same chance. Her words underscored the gap between appearance and reality, between the illusion of equality and the persistence of inequity. She made it clear that the narrative of hard work alone is convenient for those who have already arrived but cruelly dismissive to those still locked out of opportunity. Her command of the moment transformed the discussion from a political argument into a broader reflection on fairness in America. Crockett's power came from her ability to turn one man's hypocrisy into a national mirror. She forced everyone listening to confront uncomfortable questions: who benefits from the current system? Who is excluded? Who is silenced when success stories are used as proof that inequality no longer exists? Her words reminded the public that progress measured by the success of a few is not real progress at all. It was a challenge to those in power to stop using individual stories as shields for systemic problems. The brilliance of Crockett's delivery lay in her precision. She didn't generalize, she personalized. By addressing Donalds directly, she dismantled his arguments in real time, revealing how self-congratulation often replaces self-awareness. Her approach was rooted in both logic and empathy, making her critique powerful without being performative. It was an exercise in truth-telling that refused to be softened by politeness. She wasn't afraid to call hypocrisy by its name, nor to hold a mirror to those who speak about opportunity but practice exclusion. Her strength came not from volume, but from moral authority, the kind that cannot be faked. Crockett's confrontation also reflected something deeper about representation. As a black woman in Congress, she understands the layers of expectation placed on voices like hers: the scrutiny, the double standards, the pressure to stay composed even in the face of disrespect. Yet instead of shrinking, she stood taller. Her poise under pressure revealed the difference between occupying space and owning it. She didn't just respond to Donalds, she reclaimed the narrative that politicians like him try to distort. By standing firm, she reminded millions watching that representation is more than a seat at the table, it's about what you do with that seat once you have it. Her challenge to Donalds' hypocrisy struck a chord because it spoke to a broader truth about how power works. Many leaders talk about equality as if it's a past achievement rather than a current struggle. Crockett shattered that illusion by insisting that equality without access is just a performance. Her confrontation demanded that political leaders not only talk about fairness but practice it. She embodied the kind of moral clarity that cuts through the noise of partisanship and reaches the conscience of the nation. Her words reminded people that leadership is not about convenience, it's about conviction. What made this exchange unforgettable was how Crockett's message transcended the moment. It wasn't just about Byron Donalds or a single conversation, it was about a culture of hypocrisy that infects American politics. It was about the danger of pretending that opportunity is equal when it's clearly not. Her insistence on truth forced the audience to question why equality is so often conditional, why those who climb the ladder forget to hold it steady for others. In confronting that hypocrisy head-on, Jasmine Crockett didn't just expose Byron Donalds, she exposed a system that rewards selective justice and calls it success. Her words echoed far beyond that room, leaving behind not just a rebuttal, but a reckoning. In a political environment often saturated with rehearsed talking points and performative outrage, Jasmine Crockett's presence is a breath of authenticity. Her exchange with Byron Donalds revealed that politics doesn't always need to be polite to be powerful, it needs to be honest. When she confronted Donalds' hypocrisy, she didn't do it for spectacle, she did it for truth. The moment Byron Donalds attempted to defend his selective stance on opportunity, Crockett saw through the mask. Opportunities for me, not for thee, became her piercing summary of a mindset that has long shaped the corridors of power. It was a phrase that resonated far beyond the hearing room, encapsulating how some political figures embrace progress only when it benefits them while dismissing those who demand it for everyone else. Crockett's words were not just criticism, they were an awakening, a call for accountability in a system built to favor privilege and punish dissent. Her confrontation with Donalds was a masterclass in poise, intellect, and conviction. While others might have been drawn into emotional sparring, Crockett maintained a steady calm that made her argument even more forceful. She didn't need to shout to be heard, she let the weight of truth carry her message. Her composure underlined her credibility, and her precision dismantled Donalds' narrative piece by piece. Each statement she made drew a sharper contrast between authenticity and political self-preservation. Crockett wasn't simply responding to Donalds, she was exposing a pattern within politics itself, where leaders praise equality while practicing exclusion. Her tone, measured yet unyielding, reminded everyone that leadership requires integrity, not convenience. The brilliance of Crockett's delivery lay in her ability to articulate what so many people feel but rarely hear spoken aloud by those in power. She turned a simple phrase into a national reflection on the gap between rhetoric and reality. When Donalds invoked the language of opportunity, he presented himself as living proof that anyone can succeed if they work hard enough. But Crockett countered with clarity, individual success stories do not erase systemic barriers. They do not represent fairness, they represent exceptions. Her argument stripped away the comforting illusion that equality already exists, replacing it with a clear-eyed acknowledgement that opportunity remains unevenly distributed. It was a truth that some found uncomfortable, yet undeniable. Crockett's confrontation carried a moral weight that went beyond party lines. She didn't just challenge Donalds as an opponent, she challenged the broader hypocrisy of a political system that glorifies success while ignoring inequity. Opportunities for me, not for thee, wasn't only a jab at one man, it was a critique of an entire mindset. A mindset that celebrates the few who rise while overlooking the many who are kept down. Her words called out the performative allyship and selective empathy that dominate much of modern politics. In that moment, Crockett became more than a congresswoman, she became a voice for every person who has been told to be grateful for crumbs while others feast on privilege. Her calm but assertive demeanor turned the exchange into a moment of reckoning. Donalds, accustomed to the comfort of familiar conservative talking points, found himself exposed by a truth he couldn't refute. Crockett didn't just challenge his policy positions, she challenged his moral consistency. How could someone claim to advocate for opportunity while supporting policies that restrict access to it? Her question lingered in the air, unanswered but undeniable. That silence spoke volumes, and it was in that silence that Crockett's authority grew even stronger. She reminded the audience that silence in the face of hypocrisy is complicity, and she refused to be complicit. Her performance was not just eloquent, it was strategic. Crockett knew the weight of her words, the importance of tone, and the power of precision. She balanced passion with professionalism, showing that truth doesn't need to be wrapped in theatrics to be impactful. Every sentence she delivered revealed the depth of her preparation and her understanding of how systemic inequality operates. She drew attention to how narratives of self-made success are often weaponized to deny the realities of discrimination. By exposing that contradiction, she forced a national conversation about what equality truly means in practice. Her words transformed a political disagreement into a civic lesson on justice and fairness. Crockett's power came not just from her intellect but from her authenticity. She spoke from a place of lived experience, and that gave her message an emotional resonance that could not be faked. Her courage to call out hypocrisy, even within spaces designed to suppress dissent, reminded people that leadership is about conviction, not comfort. She didn't flinch when confronted with resistance, instead, she leaned into it, using truth as both shield and weapon. Her confrontation with Donalds wasn't just about political ideology, it was about the soul of public service. It was about whether leaders serve themselves or the people they claim to represent. The exchange also underscored the broader dynamics of race, gender, and representation in American politics. As a black woman, Crockett carries the dual burden of expectation and scrutiny. Every word she speaks is measured differently, every expression analyzed more harshly. Yet, instead of letting that burden silence her, she transformed it into strength. Her confidence became an act of resistance, her clarity a form of empowerment. She stood firm not just for herself, but for every voice dismissed or distorted by those in power. Her confrontation with Donalds highlighted the contrast between those who use their identity to excuse inequality and those who use theirs to challenge it. In that moment, Crockett represented something rare in politics, courage unfiltered by calculation. She wasn't performing for applause or sound bites, she was reclaiming the truth that others had twisted. Her critique of Donalds' hypocrisy served as a warning against the comfort of selective morality, where fairness is conditional and equality is negotiable. Her stance made clear that integrity is not situational, it is absolute. When she spoke, she reminded the nation that principles must remain steady even when politics shifts. Her challenge wasn't just aimed at Donalds, it was directed at every leader who confuses visibility with virtue and ambition with advocacy. What made Crockett's dismantling of Donalds unforgettable was how it redefined strength in politics. Strength isn't in shouting down an opponent, it's in standing unshaken while truth does the work. Her words exposed how some leaders hide behind slogans of opportunity while their actions reinforce exclusion. She showed that hypocrisy may wear a confident smile, but it cannot withstand the light of truth. Her confrontation became a reflection of a larger struggle, the battle between those who cling to privilege and those who demand justice. By speaking truth to power, she didn't just win an argument, she reshaped the narrative about who gets to define opportunity and who gets left out of it. Through her grace, intelligence, and courage, Jasmine Crockett turned that moment into a declaration that equality must be real, consistent, and for everyone, not just for the few who already hold it.